we're here to talk about. I want to share a strategy, a method that I've used for the last 4 or 5 years since learning it. That's really helped me decipher the meanings of my own beliefs, and it's one of the most, for me, profound things I've ever been given the ability to do. And the reason that I've decided to do this here this evening for you guys, and I want to say this first, is I do these shows or webinars. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not charging for anything, and I'm humbled and honored to have you guys come and hang out with me for a bit. But I do want to ask you guys for one thing. So as I do these shows, the only thing that I ask is that, well, I guess it's 2 things, but as we're doing it, ask stuff, engage. If you got questions or there's a conversation going on in the Facebook group, be a part of it. And along that same line, at the end, when I go back and I edit it and I make the recording available, all I ask that you do is just whatever your biggest takeaway, your insight was from that particular session, share it. Make sure to share that comment in the comment section, because just like there's the colors of the rainbow, everybody's insight's going to be different. And it might be what you took away that in the future allows someone else the ability to access a new perspective or a new thought that they never would have without you. And so while we share this time, we're sharing this time because we both made a decision to be here. And in order for this to be valuable for anybody, it has to produce a change in thoughts and beliefs that are positive for the future. And so in that moment, please write that down, please. And then please, when I make these available, share that. Number one, I want to know, because I might absolutely learn something too, right? And it's going to be very valuable for people that come across any of this in the future. So that's really the only thing I ask. I'm not going to slow down and ask you guys to give me confirmation or anything like that of it. And so let me get into this. The reason that I decided to share this particular, I guess, strategy or perspective is that, number one, we all have beliefs, and most of those beliefs are very shallow. If questioned, there's not very much holding those beliefs up. Some of those beliefs are helpful, some of those beliefs are harmful. Yet we can't really see which category those beliefs land in on the surface level. So the only way to really get access into what are the things that we're doing that are inhibiting our ability to live a better, more fuller life is to do a little bit of rigorous exploration into the things that we believe. And what I'm going to share is a specific way that I've learned to do this. Where this came from is a few days ago, I had written an email, and it was an email very different than any email I've ever written before. Before I send out emails, especially if I think it's important, I'll ask my team members to read through, mostly because I make egregious grammatical errors, like it's a part of what I am as a human being. It's always happened. I don't think it'll ever stop happening, so it is what it is. But to try to eliminate some of those, it's not the most important thing. I want them to kind of help me catch a few that I won't see. And number two, I always want people's insight. I want to see if what they're getting from what I'm saying. Well, this particular message, one of my staff members shared with me that she said, Dagan, you're speaking, the way you're writing here is you're writing like way up here, you're writing on like a college level, and in marketing, you got to keep everything to a 6th grade level, which of course I knew, right? I've learned that, I've heard that. If you study direct response marketing yourself at any point in time, you will learn that. You want everything so that Homer Simpson can understand it. That's basically the general connotation of what's necessary to get results. And what I said to her was, I'm absolutely aware of that, and I made a very conscious decision not to. Number one, the first reason was personal, which is that this message is, I wanted to be as organic and natural as possible. I wanted to communicate the way that I think, not make concessions for who might or might not necessarily get every word that I use. But there's certainly marketing implications as well for the language that we use. So if you're a marketer, and where this is coming from, where this ties into everything, is that a lot of times when we learn things, they just get stuck and they become a belief. And that's just what it is, right? So this is one of those things. Dumb everything down so that Homer Simpson can understand it. If you're a marketer, this is what you'll tend to believe. But there's always exceptions to the rules. And if you don't pause to ask yourself, number one, why do I believe that? And ultimately, is it true? Then we end up walking around with a lot of beliefs that are false. I'll share a specific one in just a moment. In this particular case, for me, what I shared with her was a couple of things. On a marketing level, number one, it's not always necessary to dumb things down. There's actually reasons to not. If you've read Joe Sugarman's book Triggers, he brings up examples. Joe Sugarman's one of the most successful and talented direct response marketers ever. When I lived in Maui, Hawaii, he literally lived right down the street. I got to meet him and hang out at in fact, my wife's favorite beach was like his backyard. So we would be there all the time. We'd see him. And it's just cool. In his book, though, he shared an example from one of his supplements, the copy that they had written for the direct mail piece, and these very specific, high-level, like college institutional level terms for the different reactionary processes and the different enzyme interactions that and the scientific precedents for why this particular supplement was such a great thing. And the marketing explanation that he gave was that you don't always want to be, easily understood from the context of using simple language, because using language that's above maybe some people's level creates an unconscious assumption of intelligence, and intelligence plays into authority and belief. If you want to learn something and you believe that someone can help you, or you want to solve a problem, you believe that someone can help you, and you see them as an authority, whether you realize why or not, then as the person that's the authority, you've gained more of their attention. They're going to be more likely to listen. And so this is one of the reasons, even within the marketing context, I don't think very many people are aware of, because I haven't heard it ever. I just read it once, and I didn't, have this additional way to think about things, a new distinction. Along with that, there's another reason. There are certain people that I find myself coming back to, certain trainers who I find myself somewhat almost mystified by what they say. And there are people like, for instance, Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is the person that, if there's a person that knows what stories are, like inherently, it's this man. He's the guy that created the hero's journey and the construct for the hero's journey. What is this process that, as he would visit across cultures, and he would realize that all stories followed somewhat of very much of a similar format. What was it? What was underlying there? It was this thing that he called the hero's journey, and he created this construct for it in his book, A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And well, I love to listen to Joseph Campbell, because when I do, it's almost like he's speaking, let me put this down. It's almost like he's speaking on a level that's almost like right above my ability to comprehend. So it's like I have to reach to get the meaning sometimes for what he's saying. In other words, it's an intensification of attention. The first battle in marketing is for attention. And I find that, first off, to be like a pleasurable experience. There's a few other people that I have that feeling about when I listen to them, and like listening to true wisdom. And it makes me listen harder and more. And so if we want to gain people's attention, this isn't a bad thing to do, because it shows a certain mastery. It shows a certain level of understanding that's above and beyond. And I would like to think that I study pretty hard. And so what I realized is that as I look back on my own past, some 11 years of doing this stuff, whenever I would do a training, and this is going to happen for all of you, right? As you gain in authority and power and ability to influence, you'll have people that will come to listen to you. And when it happens, you will be very humbled, honored, excited. And in that feeling of gratitude, you'll have people that will ask questions, and you'll want to acquiesce to their level more so than stay who you are where you are, right? So I would have people that would come to me, and first thing they'd say, Dagan, I'm a newbie. And then they'd ask a question. And my experience of that would be me kind of slowing down what I was saying and try to dumb it down. Dumb it down is the right way to say it, but like stop myself from saying what I would say on the level that I understand, and say, if I didn't know these certain terms or way of thinking, what would I say to someone that didn't, right? And I would do this. And well, maybe for the first time, when I sent this email to my team members and I had this come up and we went through it, I made the distinction for myself that like I think that's a very bad thing, because what allows a person to liberate themselves on any level is not being pandered to or catered to at their level. And so what I realized, and this is where this starts, and this is why I told people who are newbies to absolutely be here, is that when people immediately come to me and they say, hey Dagan, I've got a question, I'm a newbie, I thought about it. I thought about it last couple days. I've never observed a person that's a newbie become successful. I've never seen it. Where, in contrast, what I have seen is that those that have succeeded, they've never used any of that. They've never said these things. And so I started to really think about why. Well, what does it mean to call yourself a newbie? Like, first, what is that? It's a self-imposed label. You're creating a context for who you are within yourself, and you're imposing that on others out in the world so that they can, come into your world. But this particular label, I think, is one of the most dangerous things you can do. I never understood it, first off. I remember back in 2004, I would be on a forum and I would see people call themselves a newbie. And I'd be, what does that mean? I don't get it. And then I was like, oh, that must mean that they're new, after I saw it a few times. So why do they, all right. And it's just been kind of a passing thing. Maybe I should have investigated this more over the years. But I started to think about that observation that I've never observed a newbie becoming a not newbie, right? Why? If you call yourself a newbie, what are you thinking? You're thinking, I'm so far behind everyone, right? That please, when you speak to me, take it slow, be gentle. There's limitations on what you can then do. I'm a newbie, so here's a certain level of success that I should expect. You're also limiting what you're going to be willing to do, because you're saying to yourself, because I'm a newbie, I need as much help as I can get. So you'll search out tools and systems, and you'll also look for instructions, because what I absolutely have observed also with folks that will label themselves as a newbie is that they'll say, what should I do to create success? Like there's a recipe, right? Like if you just add a little bit of flour and a little bit of a few eggs and you bake a cake and boom, it's like this. Just tell me the ingredients and which order to put them in, and then I'll leave, right? I'll be good. And it becomes this sort of never-ending quest and a journey to find that. I need to find the secret recipe to create the key to success so I can open the door and go in. And I'm going to look for people, because I'm a newbie, please take it slow, who absolutely are not newbies, who can give me the steps so that I can then succeed. It also, upon thinking about this, creates this out if things don't go right. It gives you the ability to have a preordained explanation for why you didn't achieve. Well, I was a newbie, so like I didn't think it wasn't going to go right? So you can do that all the time if you use labels like these. And so it indicates a level of fear, is what I came to when I really got to it. It's like, if I call myself a newbie, then I can tell myself I can take it slow, and I can baby step my way to success. And I don't think that that's how anything works. But whether a person that labels themselves a newbie or not realizes it, labeling themselves that way creates the context for them to start to think in this certain way that I've never observed to produce any level of success ever. They stay newbies. It's like the dude that talked to me as a newbie in 2007. I go, oh, hey man, what's going on now? And he's at the exact same place, still looking for the thing. These are the type of self-sabotaging beliefs that are very subtle, right? That we don't see, but are absolutely there on the surface. And unless we actually investigate to find what is behind them, they'll impede our progress. Because here's the truth. For this particular example that I'm sharing with you, and I'll give you some personal ones as I go through the process. To call yourself a newbie is to create a context that is absolutely in opposition of what will allow you to succeed. A person that succeeds has a voracious curiosity without limits, so in other words, they don't say, oh, well, let me find the newbie level. I want someone to simplify and dumb this down for me. They don't have a filter for what they can and can't do. They'll just try shit. So what a successful person does and the way that they think is, let's go. They don't put limits on it. There's no assumptions. There's no, I'm just starting. I make things happen. They're going to happen. Right? And so this is really why I want to walk you guys through this process, is that those things that create success are in direct opposition to things that people call themselves newbies do. And it's the perfect quintessential example of a self-sabotaging belief that's absolutely on the surface, yet it is unobserved, and the implications and effects of such a thing are we're blind to it. And so we have to take so a newbie also doesn't necessarily take responsibility. You got to let go of that. You got to say to yourself, I'm taking total responsibility for all the good, the bad. Shit might go wrong. I might do something that hurts. I might make a mistake and then I'm bankrupt for a little while. Fuck it. I'm gonna get to whatever I need to do, right? But a newbie doesn't allow for this. They take small. Oh, it's so. Right. So it's a perfect example. Last thought, and then I'm gonna get to the process, is this. The reason I'm talking about newbies is because last night I was doing a call with my inner circle folks, and one of our new members, Deborah. Yeah, that's right. I don't need to go there. 1 second. Was on the call, and she said, "Hey, Dagan, I'm a newbie." And so we talked and we went through this stuff, but she said she'd been around and on my list since 2006. And I was like, "Whoa, that's a freaking long time." And then I started to think about this stuff we're talking about now. Like, how can you be a newbie if you've been around since 2006? And then it's like, oh, it's because I think of myself as, that's why, because it puts itself in a box, and then because we don't realize it, there's no context to not be a newbie. Like, a person that's a newbie doesn't ever say, now I'm not a newbie anymore because no, it's there, and then it can be leaned on, but it doesn't go away. And that's why so, okay, here I was. That's why I want you guys, just let go of that shit. So don't call yourself a newbie, all right? That's the whole point of that. It mentally puts you in the wrong place. And what I was surprised by, because on the call last night, one of the things I did at the end was I asked folks, of all the stuff I have here, this is essentially all the courses. It's not all of the daily content or the results of specific tests I did or interviews, but it's the different sessions I did, and there's all sorts of different sections in here that are part of the inner circle at this point. And there's open access to everyone that's a member. And I said, hey, so we're here just because I'm curious, how much of the inner circle and the Maximum Leverage Inner Circle of the different courses and sessions and live workshops that I've done, how much have you been through? We didn't have too many people there, so it's not like it's representative of everything in the world, but what's in here represents information that's absolutely unequivocally created multimillionaires and people that have done things far and beyond what I've ever been able to do. But this is unequivocally where they started. And there's open access to it, if you remember, right? And so the answer, they said, on average, one person said 25%. It was a guesstimate. But most people said about 10%. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, right? So we're here, and there's like this freaking vault of information proven to give you what you need to get to where you want to go. And you've only been through 10% of it. And a lot of times questions are asked outside of the context of what's in here for marketing, but you haven't been through it. Whoa. So, point is, if we think certain ways, and of course I ask myself, why would that be the case for that much of what's in here to be consumed? There must be beliefs that a person has that stops them. We have these self-limiting things. We all have them because our beliefs are shallow. We believe because that's what we do. We don't like think and then act. We have an emotion and then we create a belief for it. And so this is the process that I use for helping myself to get rid of beliefs that don't necessarily need to be there, because I can't see them necessarily unless I do. So how do you identify a false belief? And so where does this come from? This came from learning from another marketer, from a marketer that's very smart, a guy named Rich Schefren. And that's where the guts of this is, and then I kind of expanded it as I learned new things and as I experienced going through this process. How to eliminate and change your false beliefs. How do you do this? Where does it even begin? So the first thing that you do is you look inside you and you say to yourself, what things do I observe myself to do that are in opposition to what I want to achieve, right? You sit down and you say you're going to get to business, and then you 4 hours later, after watching a bunch of YouTube videos, get 20 minutes of work done. This would be an example, right? This would be the starting point. You would say to yourself, well, why do I continually do that? And the way that I do this is generally I'll use my journal. There's a couple different journals, so let me make sure I cover that. There's one called Pinzu, if you want an online deal. And then the other one that I'll use is called Day One, right there. But there's a million and one different journals. You can write it out on paper. You can do whatever you want. But this can't be done through sitting around and thinking to oneself. This must be thought through on paper, using a computer. There's something almost magic about starting a trail of thoughts in writing that doesn't happen if you try to do it just thinking in your own head. You get to places that you never would have imagined or thought you would. It's a deepening of what you can do on a path of thought. And so, very much so, don't just say, okay, let me ask myself why, and blah, blah, blah. No, you journal. You get out a piece of paper, you get out your computer word processor, and you write this. So, you ask why. And you keep asking why until you get to something, and what happens when you get there is you have this feeling of, fuck, damn, I didn't know. I think that's right though. That seems, yeah, fuck, that must be it. Let me give you an example. Before I went ghost and I was unavailable for about a year, what I realized was that I was far too reactionary to anything that came across my desk from a person who might be a subscriber or a customer or just anything. Anybody asking me for anything, every day before I would go to sleep, I would make sure that I addressed it. And so I found myself very much so getting to a point where I didn't have time to actually do work, because I would be in Facebook answering 1,000,001 private messages, looking on my fan page to see what questions are there, going into the group and answering questions there, going into my email and making sure that I answered everything that everyone asked me immediately. And it was inhibiting my ability to get things done. When I went through this and I started asking myself, why? The place that I came to where I kind of took that step back that I'm describing to you and said to myself, oh shit, damn, maybe, it must be right. It was, I don't remember exactly, but it was like, because you believe that if you don't, your business will die. So what I've observed is that when these things happen, it normally comes down to an emotional appeal. And most of the time it's a fear-based appeal, absolutely. But you'll see it and you'll say to yourself, damn, I didn't know that. Here's another one, just so you guys can get a feel for this. When actually I'll give you two more. When I had the experience of having my staff kind of abandon me, it was not fun, but it was one of these moments of pause where I really wanted to understand what was going on in my life. And so I came to journal and I came to ask myself, well, what's going on here? Because there was other context for what was happening. And so I went through the sort of relationships that I had with people that either worked for me or with me, and how I operated. And what that belief came down to, what I found that I believed was that I believe my business is more important than I am. And so I live to support my business, is basically where I got to. And people quitting without a moment's notice, or people being, let's say, manipulative without going into it, of authority and causing just negativity internally. These were all symptoms of this type of a belief, because what happens, and so this might be helpful if you have any sort of beliefs in the way that I did, what happens when you do that and don't realize it is you operate in the world in such a way that everyone that works for you, you actually work for them, right? Because if you believe your business is more important than you are, then they're an extension of the business, and so their, let's call it, existence, the ability for them to continue to live in this context is more important than yours. So you end up giving your power away, or I found that I ended up giving my power away because of this belief, right? And these are the sort of things that unless I do this, I can't see that at all, and I can't change, and I can't get better. What's one more? Here's another one. Very, very good. Immediately after, I went into hyperdrive, right? So, I'm alone. I got to fix everything in my business. So I went from staying up for 12 hours, 16 hours, and it was like 24 hours, and it was like, it ultimately came down like I'd be up for like 3 nights and sometimes 4 nights and then go to sleep, right? And I went, even today, like I probably, most of the time I'll stay up for at least 36 to 48 hours and then go to sleep. So I've created a new reality for myself and how I operate in the world, which is fine. If it works for you. That's not the point. The point is, when I got there, I was going through this process again. I said to myself, what's going on here? Well, I had so much to do that I can never get it all done, but I'm stubborn as hell. So I'll say to myself, I'm not going until I get this shit done, right? So I had to examine that belief. And what I found was that essentially I believed that if I put something on my list to be done, I would get it done. And that eventually that list would be done. But if that list has 42 different items, then your time that you're working starts to extend in ways that are unreasonable and unrealistic, as such described. But it was because I believed I would just get it done, right? So I had this certain belief. So hopefully these are give you some context and emphasize the importance of asking this question. All right, what's next? What's next is you ask, once you find that thing, and you'll know because you feel it, what would I need to believe in order for this to make sense? What would I need to believe in order for this to make sense? What I would need to believe for what I would need to believe in order for my belief that if I don't answer everyone's questions, then my business will fail, is that there's no value anywhere other than my own time. And I could find like 50 things like that, right? Other than giving my own time. I can find 50 things like that. But it's creating that context so you can see just how absurd that is. It's not true. And that's why this is important, so you can find those things that are not true. And the way to deepen that exploration is through using what are called functional disputes. Does this belief help or hinder me? Does the belief that I need to make sure that I physically am showing a conscious awareness of every single person's whim that wants to get my attention in a business sense, does that help? Does that hurt? That hurts. All right, so we're deepening this. We're seeing that, this is not a good thing. Another way is through empirical disputes. Do the facts show that this belief that if you don't answer people's questions, your business will go away is true? Well, people do buy stuff before I say things to them, and most of the time that's how it goes down. So, no, it doesn't support the facts. Logically, does this belief make rational sense? In what ways does this belief not ring true with common sense? The other two were common sense examples, so I don't, at least for right now, think I need to go into more. So those were both common sense. But we have these ways of examining things that allow us to give us more context and more dimension to what we're really doing when we believe certain things, to see what we're really doing. I won't go through some of this. I'll just go through the core. This is actually very important. One of the most important things you can do once you see like the absurdity of what your belief is, this belief that you just found that's at the core of a lot of behavior that's self-sabotaging you, what you can do and what you should do is create a metaphor for yourself to highlight the absurdity of that false belief. So this is actually a good example. This example goes with the belief that I just shared with you about me staying up for longer periods of time. 16 hours, 24 hours, 80 hours, whatever it is, 3 nights, whatever. And the belief was that if I put something on my list, I'm gonna get it done. Well, a good metaphor that I came up with for that was like believing that completing everything is actually possible, that you could do it on your everything that's on your to-do list, you could complete, is as insane as believing that you could drink the ocean if you just had enough time. There is no enough time to drink the fucking ocean, right? And so this very much shows the absurdity of the way I was operating. So once you've been able to identify and then kind of through just exploring that belief, get rid of it, beliefs, what I've learned as I've studied this, and I'm always studying because I'm curious about these things, are you can't like break them, but you can bend them. This was something that I heard that marketer Eben Pagan said. And that it's one of those things that's simple but sticks. And when you bend them, then they go from rigid to flexible to something that you can change. You can't break a belief, but you can bend a belief. And so all of these things that I'm going through are ways to bend that belief. So you can look at that belief, just to quickly go through some of these other options, from an internal and an external perspective. This was an example. I'm a failure as a father. Now I'm not a father. This is just an example from going through this and learning this. But for me, it might be exactly what I said. I got this list of stuff, and I'm not going to stop until I get it. Now, externally, what would a person who observes me doing that, what would their interpretation of that be? It would be that this person's a fucking nut, right? And once you get that outside perspective, what you can also do is you can deepen it by going through different perspectives, like individuals that know us, individuals that are outside of us, that don't know us, individuals that are outside of our social group. So what would a person who is a marketer but doesn't know me, or an entrepreneur that doesn't know me, might be more accepting of, what, you stay up that long sometimes? Than a person who's a garbage man, right? So what would a person outside of the group that you're in, what do they think? What would that perspective be? Explore it. Outside the group, from the culture perspective, from a world perspective, all the way up to God, right? You can take it as far as you want. The whole point is just these are tools, so I wanted to make sure I went through those as well. Another way, actually real quick before I go to, once you've eliminated the belief, what do you do to create a new one? once you get to the meaning, I'm a failure as a father, you would then question the meaning of those words. What does it mean to fail? It means that something that you were going to do, you didn't, and, how do you define it? But you recursively ask that. What would that mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? All the way until you can't anymore for all the terms. And then once you get there, what you would then ask yourself is, which is hard to do, you would ask yourself to describe what you originally started with in a completely different way. Describe it from a completely different perspective. So we start with, I'm a failure as a father, and failure means X, father means Y, and you keep going down, and you get to something different, and then you say, well, how can you say that in a completely different way? And it's hard to do, but you find a way to do it. And then, what would your mother say about that in relation to you? Would she believe that? No. All right. Okay. So anyway, once you do this, you want to create new beliefs to replace the bad ones. So you develop a new empowering belief. How do you do it? Well, you state the behavior that you want your new belief to support. An example would be me being overly reactive to any request or question that would come at me. What would my new belief be? Which is kind of how I live now. I probably check my email once a week, which is a problem in a different way, but I like it better. It would be, I want to be resistant to these requests. Then you want to list all the reasons why this new behavior will support you. Then you want to formulate the new belief based on these reasons. So that's really all you got to do. I'll go through the rest of this stuff in just a moment, but let me bring a little bit of meaning to that just so you guys can know. Once you describe the behavior you want this new belief to support, then you describe all the reasons why. And then it would be like, if I didn't spend so much time doing this, or if I spent less time doing this, I'd have more time to do this other thing. I would also not feel this certain anxiety. I wouldn't blah, 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 blah. So you have all these reasons. And eventually, you create a new belief and you make it a slogan. For the belief that I spend too much, the belief that I changed, that I'm too reactionary, what I came up with as that slogan for myself, so you guys get some context into this directly from me, it was that if you're willing to spend this much time on others, what would happen if you actually use that time instead to focus on something that what would happen if you could use that time to focus on what you could truly do? That's what it was. What if you could use that time? If you use this much time for this, what would happen if you could use that time to focus on what you could potentially truly do, reaching your potentials in the way of helping others, right? So essentially that's what the last year's been, right? I've been working on this thing, how to create unstoppable income, and it's just at the point where I'm about to bring it to the world. We've gone through some of it, but I haven't done the last part yet. It'll come next week, one way, shape, or form. And it's been a reaction to going through this process. I'm not doing the best I can for people because I'm too reactionary to their individual whims. I need to be different to truly help. How do I get myself there? So create this new belief. Then the first step for me was literally like I had my wife lock me out of anything, email, Facebook, Skype, all these different ways that people could get at me. So I physically couldn't. And that's where it began. And very much so, I have a new belief on that particular point. I don't want to go into the rest because they're just variations on what is the core there. And that core is the most important. The last thing I'll say that I'll give you in terms of all of this is that you absolutely want to inoculate yourself from your false belief. So you want to use if then. So what situations might that, so I just told you the if then, right? what situations might your past self-sabotaging belief come up in your life where you could give into it again? Well, if I'm at my computer, then I'm going to check my email. If I'm doing this, then I'm going to do this. My solution was have wife take over, change passwords. That was my answer to inoculation for that particular example. It's very important, even as it goes to the level of what goals you set for yourself. The more specific you are, not just in what the goal is, but describing the different scenarios that will come into play as you are on the path to achieving that goal. The more specific you can get on those things, the more likely you're going to. There was a study that was done on people going to the gym, and they either had them just say, they're going to go to the gym, or they had them use if-then. And they would say, if I'm at work, then I'm going to go to the gym that's across the street. If I'm at home, I'm going to then go to the gym in whatever way. You get the point. The difference between people doing those two things, both with the intent to get more healthy and go to the gym, was that those that used the if-then were about 70% more likely over a period of time to develop that new habit. So the more context that you can give in a real-world scenario to what you'll experience as you're trying to achieve something, the more likely you will. And so using things like if-then is a very powerful thing to do, a very powerful tool to use. Sell yourself on a new belief and make it stick, right? If you have this new way of being, how's your life going to be better? Man, I'm not going to have this, I'm not going to have that, I'm going to have so much time to do this. And then at the end, here's what's going to happen. So you just sell yourself. So it's getting yourself out of something you didn't know that was crushing you, and then selling yourself on this new thing, and you change in an amazing way.